Welcome to Your Success Podcast. We give you actionable insight and stories behind real-life success wherever you go.
Welcome to Your Success Podcast. I'm Angelos, and today I'm interviewing Peter Hill of Mark Holt & Co. about the subject of whether you should fire some customers and why. Peter Hill is a director of Mark Holt & Co. and author of Pricing for Profit, who has decades worth of experience helping to turn around businesses into profitable enterprises. And you're always welcome to be on the podcast, Peter, because I know we get great feedback and you're always well received. So thank you for joining me today.
I enjoy doing them.
So here we go. Playing devil's advocate here, Peter. Surely every client and every customer is valuable, and every business should bend over backwards to keep their customer. Is that right, or is that wrong?
The short answer is no, that's wrong.
Okay.
But I will elaborate. I think the starting point when I was thinking about it yesterday is we need to think about what you mean by a valuable customer. Okay. What makes a customer valuable? Well, the starting point for me as an accountant, numbers person, is we want a customer to generate more in income than it costs us to serve that customer. So we would like every customer to be a profit contributor, and the larger that profit contribution, the better the customer. Okay, so that's a starting point, the financial contribution they make to your business through the profit that they create for you. There are some very large customers, perhaps, who also helped financially in terms of they spend so much, that's great for your positive cash flow. There's a regular stream of cash coming in. You've got some certainty about how much money's coming in every month. That's a useful thing for any business to have a large customer that has regular cash flow. They may be a prestige account, so having that customer attracts other similar customers. So there are soft reasons sometimes why you might accept lower profit margins on some bigger customers because there are other elements to that financial relationship, okay? But that's a financial relationship. The other part of the value judgment is what about all the soft things? What about all the other things that working with a customer brings for you? So are they prolific referrers of other good customers? You know, we have some clients here where they're not the most financially viable for us, but they just keep recommending people. Brilliant, that's great, we want that. As I say, you might have a prestige account where just doing business with them, oh yeah, we work for so-and-so, brings other work in, build your reputation. So lots of other soft issues why there might be value in that client relationship. I call those the yeah, but customers, because when I say to a client of mine, look at all these accounts you've got that you don't make any money out of, you should sack them. They go, oh yeah, but... And then they have what I would probably call excuses. So they would say, he's a big customer, he's an important customer, or, yeah, but they're going to spend more next year, which is the other common myth that we get. So that's the key thing from our point of view is, okay, we want to have valuable customers. How do we determine the value of those customers? And I think there are hard reasons and there are soft reasons. And my experience is people think they're good customers without any evidence to the contrary. So your first question, is it a good idea that every customer is a good customer? Absolutely not. In financial terms, some of them are actually costing you money to do business with.
Okay, so can you give me some examples of where you've had great clients perhaps and other times you've had not so great clients?
Of course, yeah. So we've got a project on the go at the moment, and we've just finished another project, both large businesses, 5, 6, 7 million turnover businesses. And actually what was quite startling when we did them is the results were very similar between the two businesses. So one of the things we do is we look at their customer base and we put them into big, good customers, middle customers and small customers, and we sort of segment them into those categories. And in both those cases, the bottom 50% of the customer base was somewhere between 2 and 4% of their annual turnover. So a huge number of customers generating a tiny contribution to turnover. And then when you actually look at that, we find out that they're costing us money to do business with them, because every customer, there is a cost of contact, cost of doing business with them. There was another research project that I found many years ago that looked at accounting firms particularly, so very relevant to us. And they concluded that the top 80% of the customers of any particular accounting firm contributed 125% of the profits, and then the bottom 20% of customers lost you 25% of the profits. So if a practice made £100,000 per partner profit, they actually made £125,000 off the good ones and lost £25,000 off the bad ones to get to that net 100 grand. Now that is probably common in most businesses that have not yet done any stratification. So if they just have customers and you did an analysis, almost certainly you'd find that the bottom customers are losing you money and your best customers are making the money. Make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. So you talked about analysing that information. So what should businesses be measuring and monitoring? What kind of analysis can identify these kind of customers? Because you have to be very careful, right? Because you don't want to eject the wrong customers.
There are quite a lot of things you can measure. So let's take an easy one to start with. If your business turns over 3 million quid and you have 500 customers, then the average customer is spending £6,000 a year, okay? Most businesses I talk to would not know that number. It's not hard to work it out. It's a very simple calculation, but they wouldn't know that number. As soon as you know that number, you know that winning a customer that spends £4,000 a year is diluting the quality of your customer base. And every time you win a customer that spends more than £6,000 a year, you are improving the quality of your customer base. There are lots of statistics that look at profitability and value of a business and show a very direct correlation between improved profits, improved value, and customer quality. So one number I would measure is what's the average customer spend? Because as soon as you measure that, your brain starts to think, hang on a minute, that's a below average customer, that's an above average customer, and it changes your mindset. Does that make sense?
What about the time aspect? Because obviously, you're billable, everyone's billable. If let's say you have a customer who doesn't spend a lot, but then again their time spent on the account for that customer is minimal.
Yep.
Is there an average that you take?
Well, there's not an average, but in the project we're working on at the moment, we're trying to prove to the our client, that some customers are losing them money. Okay, so we did a very rough calculation that says, right, a typical transaction is someone rings up and speaks to a salesperson and says, I want X. That phone call can take 2 minutes, it can take 20 minutes, but we said on average that's a 3 or 4 minute phone call. They then do a quote. The quote is sent out by email. That probably takes 10 minutes. Let's assume the customer says, great, that's what I want. Somebody then has to pick it off the shelves, pack it, ship it, send an invoice out. If they're an account customer, someone's then got to send a statement, chase the money, etc., etc. So we quantified the cost of a typical transaction. Now, that's a very average calculation because some quotes take 4 hours to do, some quotes take 2 minutes to do. But across the board, what we determined is that every transaction takes at least £5 worth of some cost to produce, okay? Usually people time, that's where most of it is, but it might be paper, it might be ink, it might be, whatever. Certainly delivery, if that's not charged for, that's a cost of every transaction. So we worked that out for that business and we determined, and it's just a starting number for us to get a bit more sophisticated later, that every transaction costs £5. We know that their average profit margin is 25%, which tells me immediately if the sale value is less than 20 quid, they've made no money. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So on a £20 transaction, £5 is the profit margin, gross profit margin. If it costs £5 to do that transaction, you've made no money. And then we looked at it and said there were 4,000 transactions in the last year below 20 quid. So as soon as you start to do that calculation of either the average customer spend or the cost of every single transaction, as soon as you start to get data that says, what does it actually cost me to do business with these people? Then you start to work out, well, hang on a minute, below that value, I am not making any money, starts to then focus your attention on, okay, what can I do about that? Can I change it? And one of the options is sack the customers, but we'll come back to that later. So I guess the point I'm making is it's slightly different in most businesses, but there are probably 3 or 4 or 5 numbers that are relatively easy to measure. Some might be subjective, relatively easy to measure, that help you identify some people make you money, some people cost you money. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. And it can be quite startling for a business to do this kind of analysis, right?
Well, the interesting thing you find is there is a presumption that your bigger customers are the most profitable. And often what we find out is they're not, because they're squeezing you harder, they're getting better deals, they're more demanding, they take more resources, their bigger orders take a lot more time and effort to ship. If they're on credit, their bigger debt has more cost to manage, etc. So that's often surprising, that you think big customers are good customers, and actually you find out that some of your big ones are draining the business. The resources that are allocated to that customer are more than the profit margin you're making. You will almost certainly find in most businesses there's a chunk of business right at the bottom. It's small, it's infrequent, it's pain in the arse customers. They think spending £100 with you means that they're God, and actually they don't realise you've got customers spending £100,000 with you, but they behave as if they're the best customers. They ring all the time, they moan all the time, they don't pay on time, they expect the earth, etc., etc. There's a chunk of customers at the bottom end of most businesses where I could almost guarantee they're loss-making customers. That's what the statistics show.
Yeah. Okay, so you've identified these customers. Let's say it's the bottom X%.
Yeah.
How do you sack them off and not burn your bridges and keep it in a diplomatic way? How do you remove a customer?
It's a very interesting question. And I think depends is the cop-out answer. Let's start with the classification of customers. So on the project we're doing at the moment, we've identified A customers. There's a small number of them. They're the big ones. They are 60-odd% of annual turnover. So 20 customers is 2/3 of turnover. But you've got to love them to death. They are critical customers you can't afford to lose. Then there's a middle ground. I can't remember what the numbers were. 150 customers. 30-odd% of turnover, probably under-cultivated. There's opportunity with these people. And then we've identified this bottom chunk of people where we think we're losing money. Overall, the turnover we get from those customers versus the cost of servicing those customers, we're losing money. So we've now got this lump of customers. I think in that particular instance, there's 170 of them. In other businesses, it might be 50, it might be 1,000, it doesn't matter. But there's a group of customers where overall the statistics say we're probably losing money on those customers. Your options are, number one, send them a letter saying, please go to name of your competitor. Just say, go away. We don't need your business. We don't want your business. We don't care about you. Now, that's a bit blunt, and that probably could also tarnish reputations externally. So our view is we would probably say something along the lines of, our business has evolved enormously in the last 5 years. We can no longer service certain customers as economically as we used to, so we have a number of options. Now again, whether you do this as a generic thing to all customers, they all get the same letter, or whether you go, these 50 look like this, these 50 look like that, but your options are, we are going to have to increase the price, okay? And you just put it up by, in the project we're doing at the moment, we've applied a minimum profit margin of 40%, whereas it used to be 25%. That's effectively a fairly significant price increase. The customer will choose if they stay or go. We don't have to sack them. They will stay or they will go. If they think, well, these guys are brilliant and they're fantastic at what they do and they're still good value for money, they'll stay. And some of them will stay because they do think those things. Others will go, blimey, that's expensive, and leave. We haven't had to sack anyone. We've just made them make a decision whether they want to stay or go. We can also say we're changing the terms of business. So you used to get free delivery, you don't anymore. There is a minimum order value. If we didn't have one before, you could literally ring up and ask us to send you something for 70p and we would send it to you. Now minimum spend is £10 or £20 or £50, whatever you decide. You can apply other criteria, like you can't have credit on an account that spends less than £300 a year, because suddenly paid up front changes your cost dynamic slightly. You could have, if you have an online presence, and most businesses should have an online presence, it could be you can't ring us anymore for your, and again, you might find a nice name for it, our online customers. You get access to these special deals, blah, 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 but effectively it's online. You can't speak to anyone. You don't take up any of our time. You pay up front on credit cards, etc., etc. That changes your cost dynamic dramatically. So it isn't just a question of write a letter saying go away, albeit I have done that and I would advise that in some businesses because you need a sledgehammer to get this thing sorted. In other businesses, I think you simply offer them different circumstances. Price has gone up, no free delivery, minimum order values, you've got to go online, you can't ring us, whatever you want to call it, that moves those people either to become profitable customers or encourages them to find an alternative provider. Okay,
so I like that. in a nice diplomatic way, you're making them make the
Make
choice.
them make the choice.
Yeah.
That's the key thing. Yeah, absolutely.
But let's say they take real offence to this. They're like, oh,
Yeah.
okay, Christ, they don't value my business. They've burnt my bridges. I'm off.
Yep.
Do you not run the risk, therefore, with the small guys who at the start are just treading water, and eventually they become big players?
Yep.
You miss out on that future business.
That's a very interesting question, and I gave that some real thought. That is in the category of the but excuses. But he could be a big customer next year. Okay, maybe he could. If I look back over decades, as you reminded me right at the start, decades of working life, the number of times I've had somebody say, look, I know we only turn over £100,000 a year now, but it's going to be 5 million, so we'd love you to take us on an account. How many times do you think they've actually then turned over 5 million?
Minimal.
Yeah, it doesn't happen. It's a 1 in a million shot, not in a 100 shot, not in a 110 shot. So those customers that you think they're only small now, they'll be big later. The Virgins of this world, the Dysons of this world, businesses who once upon a time were on their knees, and you go, well, we need to help them out because they could be good later. They're 1 in a million. They're not regular. So yes, you can say he could be big later, but in effect, you're backing 999 rubbish customers to find the one that might be good.
Yeah.
Doesn't add up. Okay. A slight alternative to that is they are spending a lot of money, but not with you. So they're spending £2,000 a year with you, but 50 grand a year somewhere else. That's a different thing. They're already a big customer. You're just not getting a big enough slice of their wallet. That's the key. In which case, what I would say is, okay, you've got 12 to the salesman or the business owner or whatever. Okay, you've got 12 months. Not would I like more of their spend? How am I going to get more of their spend? Who's going to look after that account? How often are they going to see them? What are they going to say to them? What tactics do we have to get 2,000 to 20,000 to, we are now their preferred supplier? What am I going to do? Because it's not a wish, it's got to be a plan. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So it's all very well saying, they could be big later. Well, in the vast majority of cases, they simply won't, in which case you're spending an awful lot of time and money to back 1,000 horses or 1,000,000 horses because one might pay off 5 years down the line, and all that resource is wasted. Or alternatively, they are spending it somewhere else, in which case, what's your plan? How are you going to make it happen? Because in most cases I talk to, it's, but it could be big next year. Okay, but a year later they aren't. And a year after that, they aren't. And again, all that resource is wasted.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
I guess the point I'm making, this is a really important point. One is the fundamentals of each individual customer. Do we make money or don't we make money out of them? And I think in most businesses, they don't know that stuff. They don't know if they're making money or not out of that customer. Let's suppose they are losing money on that customer. Financially, get rid of them. You might go, but he's a good customer, reputation or whatever. Okay, keep them. Make a choice, but make an informed choice. If they're a good, profitable customer, great, that's okay. The problem I got with lots of clients is all the customers are making profits. They're all good contributors to profits. But inevitably, if you've got a list of 100 customers and they're all contributing profit, some are contributing a lot and some are contributing less. That's the nature of mathematics, isn't it? Is they're not all contributing exactly the same. Even if they're all profitable, there are good ones and bad ones. There may not be good ones and loss-making ones. And the problem for lots of businesses, my business, we talked about it just now, my business, your business, lots of businesses, is the issue is one of scarce resource. I don't have enough time, people, money, buildings, whatever. I can't look after everybody as well as, everybody wants to be looked after. I have a scarce resource. The biggest problem for almost all of my clients at the moment is recruitment. They can't get their hands on good people. So if I have a scarce resource, I must then say, okay, where does that time get spent? And if it's getting shared out amongst a bunch of customers, some make me a lot of profit, some make me a little profit, I haven't got the time to go and find more of the good ones because I'm spending time on the poorer ones. I'm not necessarily looking after my good ones as well as I could be. In most businesses I talk to, you think the guy's spending, £250,000 a year, what a great customer. Well, it may be £400,000 a year if you spent more time with them. But you don't spend more time with them. They are a reactive customer. You spend more time with the pain in the arse ones at the other end of the list. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So it isn't just about the financials of are they profitable or loss-making. Even if all your customers are profitable, there's a secondary decision, which is my time better spent on these ones at this end of the scale or these ones at this end of the scale? And because we have scarce resource of time and resources, whether that's cash flow to finance the account or whether it's warehousing space or employees or whatever it might be, the secondary issue is not just about the finances, it's about the quality of customer. How do I get more of the good ones? How do I keep the good ones? Well, I'm struggling to do that if my time's being spent and sapped on the smaller ones. Does that make sense?
Yeah. My uncle, who had a business in Plymouth many years ago, he said to me, quite a wise man, he said, 2 struggles of any business is that they have too many customers or not enough customers.
Yeah.
And I guess from the too many customers point of view, you can either employ more staff, which you've mentioned already, or you can send out those diplomatic letters and say prices going up, and then at least you're making more profit out of them, right, to justify the more time. But then on the flip side of what we've been talking about, by sacking off these customers, I guess when times are hard and we hit recession or whatever it is, you've lost a chunk of those customers. But then on the other hand, they weren't making you money anyway. So is it even worth having them?
If you go back to the example I gave earlier on about, again, it was a while ago, but it was a big review of thousands of accounting practices. Okay, so we're a business like any other business. We have customers, we have good ones, bad ones, etc. Their analysis across a very large database showed that in most of those practices, the top 80% of customers were generating 125% of profits and the bottom ones were losing 25%. So in a modest accounting practice where the owners are making 100 grand a piece, there's 25 grand they're giving away to rubbish customers. If they just stopped that, so if they sacked off their bottom 20% of their customers, they'd make £25,000 a year, 25% more profit. You bank that for 5 years and you can ride that recession.
Yeah.
You don't bank that for 5 years, that's where you end up in difficulties, because when things get tough, who does it get toughest for first? The ones at the bottom end of the scale. They become more demanding, they don't pay their bills on time. So there's a double whammy, which is all about this quality judgment, which is even if they're all profitable, some are better quality than others, and the value of your business, the profitability of your business, the stability of your business in good times and bad is improved if you improve the quality of your business. And you improve the quality by adding more above average and removing those below average. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's
so
really
I don't think it matters whether it's good times or bad times. And the other thing is, most people I talk to work too damn hard. If you could work 25% less time and make 25% more profit because you're getting rid of the right customers, you'd be mad not to, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
That's the reality. The reason we all don't is because we don't know those numbers. That's the real problem. When I go into a business and say, okay, let's look at your customers, they have turnover is 6 million quid. They don't know where that's coming from. The one we went to the other day, the first thing we did is let's print off a list of all your customers showing the amount they spent in the last 12 months. And he went, oh my God, I didn't know they spent that much. Cool, look at that. Oh, that's amazing. That information's at his fingertips every day of the week, but no one looks at it. Then you get to the other end of the scale and you go, so this guy here spends £100 a year with you across 10 transactions, so the average of £10 a sale, and it costs us £5 to make every sale. So here's the line, all these ones are costing you money, 50% by number costing you money to do business with. I had no idea. Well, it's not unusual. Most businesses I talk to don't know those numbers. So the starting point for us of any project is, let's get some data. Let's list your customers by how much they spend. Let's look at what it costs to do a transaction. Let's find our average spend and see who's above average and who's below average. There's lots of data that we can identify to make better decisions. What decisions you then make is entirely up to you, but some of them become so blindingly obvious. Even in that example, he goes, so I should be sacking those customers then? Yes. It didn't take decades of experience to work that out. He just went, that's obvious. I don't make any money out of these people.
What's interesting, Peter, is that apart from the profit, that's the most obvious one,
yeah,
by sacking off your customers, is the time that you claim back, but also adding to the stability of your company.
Yeah.
So like you just said about riding that recession, well, you've made profit during the heyday, so you can ride out the recession. I think that's quite interesting.
People don't, of course. They just make more profit and spend it. That's the reality. Have I ever met a business who's gone, we're having good times, we ought to bank a bit of this? No, they buy a bigger car and a bigger house or whatever. That's up to them. The point I'm making is your business more stable if a chunk of the customers are low value, low profit, high demand, time-sapping customers? Well, that doesn't make your business any better. It actually makes life harder in most cases. And it's this happens in lots of areas of business. It's about getting people to think of the opportunity cost. By spending time on these people, the opportunity to spend it on these people is lost. Would I make more money by spending 10 minutes on the big customers than 10 minutes on the small customers? I think I would. That's the reality. One of the things that we've done, Mark Holton Co has been around 30 years. We've been through, how many recessions would that be? 3 probably. So like all businesses, we've been through, oh, crikey, where's the money coming from? And on a couple of occasions, we've run what we call listening initiatives. So, okay, there's not enough work going around. Let's go to a client, sit down with them and say, you're an important customer. Every time I sit down with you, I've got an agenda and we cover everything. I don't want to cover the agenda. Tell me what's going on. Tell me what's worrying you. Tell me what keeps you awake at night. I just want to listen. You talk to me. Every time we do that, business comes out of it. But when I haven't got time to do that, I'm earning 20 quid down here on this customer instead of £20,000 on this customer. And that opportunity cost of, and it could be the same on your people. You've got to employ 50 people. Where does most of your time go? In most businesses, on the whingers and the moaners and the pain in the arms. Have you got a minute? You know, all that kind of stuff. Not on the star players who just keep their head down and work hard. Would I get more reward for my time talking to my best employees than talking to my worst employees? Same principle as customers. You probably should be sacking a few of those people, you know, because actually when you cut to the chase, are those bottom end employees making you any money? Probably not. And if you got rid of them, would it allow you to have more time to spend with your best employees? Yes. Same principle across lots of areas of business. The opportunity cost of having to deal with the bottom end of any list, people, customers, suppliers, whatever it might be, is I haven't got time to deal with the best end of the list. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And that principle for customers is a bit more visual. We can measure it profitability-wise, but it's the same principle on energy. It's the same principle on employees. It's the same principle on lots of areas of business. If I waste it on the bottom end, I can't spend it on the top end. Does that make sense?
That's absolutely brilliant. I love that. So, Peter, just finally, how do people get in contact with you and how do they get access to your book?
Well, the book is available on Amazon, so they can get it from there.
And that's
Pricing for Profit by Peter Hill. They can get contact with me through Mark Holton Co. All the details are on the website. I prefer if they've got a copy of the book where all my details are, because then they've got to buy a copy of my book to get it. But they can get me through Mark Holton Co. They can get me through the Amazon by buying the book. Pick up the phone, give me a call. One of the things that we work very hard to do is to make sure we have time to talk to people, because some of those might be the star customers of tomorrow. And I don't know until I've spoken to them. But if I'm too busy, if the phone rings and someone says, we've got a potential customer, and I go, I haven't got time for any more customers, I don't know that the one I'm turning away isn't 10 times better than the one I'm currently talking to. So we have to have time to have a free conversation. Tell me about your business. If it's something, and it happens quite often, if it's something where you go, wow, that's interesting, I think I could really help with that one, I've got to have the time to have that conversation, and therefore I can't be spending it at the other end of the list. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Well, thank you for your time today, Peter. I think our listeners at home are going to really have their minds opened a little bit to sacking off customers, which perhaps they didn't even consider before. And I think the most important thing I've learned from this is to measure everything, and see who are the most profitable customers, and then take some action to either make them more profitable or say goodbye to them in a diplomatic way.
I think that in the context of customers, that's absolutely true. All the things I've said you should do. And would I care if you just listed them and sent a letter to the bottom 10% and said, go away? No, because that's probably still the right answer. There might be a but customer in there, but there probably isn't. My point, though, is actually this is an issue across all aspects of businesses. Most people don't make good decisions because they don't have data, whether it's who are my best employees or who are the, best suppliers, or whatever it might be. They're making guesswork decisions. They don't have facts to be able to do that. One of the things we see in lots of businesses where they have multiple branches is overall, we're making money, that's great. But I would know if you've got 10 branches, some are much more profitable than the others. So let's get a P&L by branch. Let's get a P&L by customer. Let's get a P&L by salesperson, whatever it might be. It's making sure you don't have average decisions. Overall, it's okay, therefore it's okay. No, some is much more okay than others. Let's make some informed decisions. And the bit that we find with most of our clients is on customers, that's quite easy to see. In other areas of business, it's a bit harder, but it's about making decisions on facts, not on hearsay or gut instinct or,
And that's where the businesses need their KPIs and all the other bits and bobs to accumulate that data, then you can make some informed decisions.
And the good thing is, across my decades of work, when I first started work, that data was not there. Computers weren't used in the same way. You didn't have, details of average customer spend without having to trawl through a lot of information to get it. Now, pretty much any software you're using, you can press a few buttons and it will give you any data, diced and sliced however you want it. The information is there if you go and ask the right questions. And then sit down and, again, I don't think you need to be a guru in business to see what that information tells you. Most people will go, well, they're good customers, they're bad customers. It's not rocket science, but if you don't have that data, you can't make that judgment.
Brilliant. Well, thank you again for your time,
My pleasure,
Peter.
as always.
I want to know your thoughts at home about whether you've had to sack off customers or perhaps you need to start considering it. Please share that at hello@yoursuccesspodcast.com or get in touch on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn. We're everywhere. Thank you again, Peter, and thank you for listening to Your Success Podcast. Please click subscribe, leave us a review. We look forward to your comments on our Facebook page and YouTube channels and everywhere else. I've been Angelos, and see you again on the next exciting Your Success Podcast.
You have been listening to Your Success Podcast. Click subscribe for more incredible content. More details can be found at www.yoursuccesspodcast.com.